Welcome to today's DNA. We are discussing 5 topics. First 4 are related to the prelims and fifth one is related to the mains. First topic is AstroSat mission which completed its 10-year. Second is United Nations General Assembly. Third is National Security Act 1980. Fourth is appointment of the Chief Secretary of State. Fifth one is the Stampede Management. First news is on AstroSat mission of India. So AstroSat, which is India's first space-based multi-wavelength observatory, has completed its 10-year of operations, right. It was launched in 2015 and now it is 2025, right. So we can see the AstroSat in the background. So it is related to the science and tech section of the UPSC. Let us try to understand what is AstroSat all about and what is the contribution of AstroSat for the India's science community, right. So it was India's first dedicated astronomy observatory launched from the PSLV C-30 from Satish Dhawan Space Station 10 years back, right, September 28, 2015. What was its mandate? So it basically observes universe in multiple wavelengths. Very important. It tried to observe universe in multiple wavelengths like UV rays, visible rays, X-rays, enabling the study of cosmic phenomena from neutron star to black hole simultaneously. You can see it as a visible spectrum, UV, infra, radio, etc., right. You can see it in the background, right. And it carried 5 scientific payload along with it. For example, there are different telescopes of the AstroSat. There is a large area X-ray proportional counter, there is a soft X-ray telescope, cadmium, zinc, tellurium, there are multiple payload that it is carrying, right. Now the lifespan of AstroSat was of 5 year and it is not since 10 year it is working. It basically demonstrate India's robustness in terms of the space sciences and its equipment, right. And missions science data is handled by the Indian Space Science Data, which is it in Bangalore, right. And not only the ISRO is benefiting out of it, but also the universities, at least 132 universities are benefiting from the data collected by the AstroSat, which is very good for the India's science scenario, right. What is the scientific impact of the AstroSat? So AstroSat provided unique capability for simultaneous multi-wavelength observations from a single platform, enabling new insight into the X-ray binary stars, magnetic field of neutron stars, star birth regions and high energy processes in extra galactic system. These are the basically capabilities of the AstroSat. So we can see it is a very versatile instrument, right. And what is the major observation that done by the AstroSat? So basically it solved 2-decade puzzle of the red giant star bright. So can you tell me in the comment box what is red star bright, right? Why the color of such star is red, right? Now it also detected far UV photon from 9 billion light away, right, which basically provided us idea about the early universe, right. Also it expanded our scientific knowledge of X-ray emissions from the binary stars, right. It also led X-ray polarization study which led to the discovery of bright X-ray sources, right. And it also led to the ultraviolet imaging telescope, and it is very again capable of doing such kind of the scientific research, right. So AstroSat is not only helping India, but it is also helping the multi nations in order to develop their scientific capacities, right. And it is globally accessible. However, 50% of the users of the AstroSat are from the India, right. And we obviously know that it exceeded its lifespan, and its operational performance has exceeded the expectation. It basically helped us to understand Indian self-reliance in complex area like space, right. So that is all on the AstroSat. Hope you are able to understand about the AstroSat and its capabilities, right. Now from the given scheme, try to solve the answer. Next news is on the United Nations General Assembly. So you might have either have seen the video of our S. Jaisankarji, External Affairs Minister, as well as one IFS, right, Miss Galhoth, right, basically condemning Pakistan's, right, rhetoric in the United Nations General Assembly. Also, S. Jaisankarji beautifully basically discussed India's position in terms of the various aspect of the world politics, right. Accordingly, the topic United Nations General Assembly become quite important, right. What is the context of it? So, India stepped up its engagement with the global south quite visibly during the External Affairs Minister S. Jaisankar's hectic consultation at the United Nations 88th High Level Week, and it was quite different because we are having anti-Israel stance on the Gaza issues. We also try to condemn United-led trade turmoil, Trump tariff that we call, and there is a lack of United Nations reform, which is also one of the favorite question of the UPSC. That is why this topic is very important and it is related to international relations and organizations, right. Now, we will try to understand what is United Nations General Assembly, what is the composition of it, and what is the mandate of it, right. So, basically UNGA, that is United Nations General Assembly, is having universal membership of 193 members, and there are few observer states as well. For example, Palestine, which is not recognized by majority of the countries, is observers having the observer status in the United Nations, right. And it generally meets annually in September, and it was 80th such meeting of the United Nations General Assembly. The presidency of UNGA rotates annually among the regional groups, for example, Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America and Caribbean, Western Europe and others, right. So, it is rotational based, and each country's delegation is basically alphabetically seated, right, and head of the states are seated in the front, right. So, that is the composition and functioning. Now, what are the main bodies of United Nations General Assemblies? So, it is General Committee having one president, 21 vice president, and there are 6 chair of committees. For example, there are first committee that is on the disarmament and international security. That is the first committee of the UNGA. Second is the economic and financial, right. Second is economic and the financial. Third is social, humanitarian and cultural. Fourth is special political and decolonization committee. Next is fifth one, that is administrative and budgetary committee. It is very important, right. And fourth is the legal committee, right. So, these are the United Nations committees related to the UNGA, right. And there are other subsidiary organs of the United Nations General Assembly as well. For example, United Nations Disarmament Commission, there is the International Law Commission, Human Rights Council, Peace Building Commission, and these are the bodies associated with the United Nations, right. And each committee specializes on a special agenda. For example, legal agency will look for the legal issues, decolonization will look for the decolonization thing, right. Now, how United Nations General Assembly works, let us try to understand about the working management of UNGA. So, each member state has a single vote, one country, one vote, right. And important issues require 2/3 majority and simple issues require simple majority. It is also somehow related to Indian parliamentary working, right. Now, decisions are mostly recommendation and based. There is no legal backing of these decisions, but it shows political mood of the world. That is the important, and debates, discussion and thematic sessions on global issues are conducted from the time to time, and it is also responsible for electing non-permanent Security Council member. So, we know the P5 members, they are permanent, and there are other 10 members, those are non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, which is the top decision making body, I will rather say, right, of the United Nations. So, it also elect the non-members of the non-permanent members of UNGA, right. Now, what is the role of India in UNGA? So, we will have to understand the statement from our External Affairs Minister S. Jaisankarji, and it is one of the favorite questions. That is why I have kept the statement verbatim, right. Let us try to understand what India is saying. What is the India's stance? India is saying an objective report card will show that United Nations is in state of crisis. That is the statement given by the S. Jaisankarji. Or when peace is under threat from conflict, when development is derailed by lack of resources, and when human rights are violated by terrorism, United Nations remains gridlocked. This is the way you should be writing your answers as well. This is the, that's why I am picking all these lines as it is, right. As its ability to forge common grounds diminishes, belief in multilateralism also recedes. Central to the erosion of United Nations credibility has been resistance to reform. So, they are quite reluctant to reform, and that is the key issue with the United Nations. So, you can write in your answers as well, right. Most members strongly desire change, but process is being made to an obstacle to the outcome. So, process is so complex that it is not possible as of now from the given mandate to reform, to do any kind of the reform in the United Nations. Now, it is imperative that we see through the cynicism and purposefully addresses the reform agenda. The historical injustice done to the Africa should be redressed, right. We will try to cater the global south, our partners, that is the South Africans, right. Both permanent and non-permanent membership of the council must be expanded, and it is our largest position that the membership of the at least permanent members should be expanded, as well as there should be expansion of non-permanent members to the United Nations Security Council, right. A reformed council must be truly representative. That is our again our apprehension, that is in present circumstances UNGA is not fully representative body, right, and India stand ready to assume greater responsibility, and we are basically showing our interest that yes, it is high time that India should be taking the responsibility, driver's seat in the United Nations General Assembly, United Nations Security Council, and any such kind of the body, right. So, and that is why we have basically suggested multiple kind of the reform into the United Nations General Assembly, United Nations Security Council or otherwise, right. So, that is all on this topic. Now, let us try to solve the question from the discussed information. Hope you will be able to solve it and comment your answer in the textbook, right. Next news on the National Security Act, that is the NSA. So, what happened? You might have heard about protest which is going in Ladakh and demand for the statehood and inclusion of 6th schedule area, right. We have already discussed in one of the DNAs. Accordingly, the so called environmentalist and activist Sonam Wangchuk was detained, and NSA was imposed on it, and as per the reports he was basically taken to the Jodhpur jail for the further process, right. So, this topic become quite important. What is National Security Act all about? How it was enacted? What are the loopholes? What are the various cases? We will discuss in next few minutes, right. So, it is related to the internal security of the UPSC syllabus. Now, let us try to understand what is NSA all about. So, NSA Act was basically finalized in 1980, right, and is a basically central preventive detention law. What is it? It is preventive in nature, enabling the union or state to detain individuals to prevent act prejudicial to the national security, public order, India's foreign relations or maintenance or of essential supplies and services, that we call ISMA, right, ISMA Act, right, with provision for advisory boards, disclosure on ground and revocation of the imposition of NSA, and maximum detention generally goes up to 12 months only. That is the brief introduction of the NSA, that is the National Security Act, right. Now, let us try to understand evolution of NSA in India, right. Let us try to understand. So, you might heard about the Government of India Act 1915, as well as you might heard about the Black Act or the Rowlatt Act, right. Accordingly, in protest of it, Gandhiji have started its first pan India national movement, that we call Rowlatt Satyagraha, and Jallianwala Bagh tragedy is also somehow related to that timeline only. So, basically directly or indirectly the present NSA is having some kind of the hues of that Government of India Act 1915 only, right, or the Black Act of the 1919, right. So, but in the modern times it is the MISA, that is the Maintenance of Internal Security Act, which was enacted in 1971 during the Indira Gandhi's regime, against which there was a large scale student protest by the then students of India, right, was conducted, and Jayaprakash gave call for the complete revolution, right. So, accordingly the NSA was briefly repealed in 1977, right, due to the political pressure, because uh, one of the central protest and the key idea of the protest was invocation of the MISA during that time, right. However, later on the NSA was promulgated as an ordinance. You know how ordinances are enacted under Article 1 to 3, right, under the Indira Gandhi government to re-establish a national preventive detention framework, right. And what is the core provision of this act? So, detention order can be made by the center or the state government in specified circumstances and may be empowered for a short period by the local magistrate or the commissioners, right, subject to the obviously approval from the higher authorities of the states or the union, right. But the ground of detention must be communicated to the detainee, right. Also, no timeline is given. It is only given that as soon as possible the detainee should be informed about the imposition of NSA on them, right. And the case once it is done must be referred to an advisory board within the 3 weeks with the maximum detention of 12 months. What happens? So, if X person is being detained, he or she should be informed about the grounds, right, and he should be informed as soon as possible of it. The case should be referred to an advisory board, generally headed by a judicial person, right, and the advisory board will have to give decision in 3 months, and accordingly maximum 12-month imposition of NCA can be done at one time. This is the provision of this act, right. Now, when NSA is imposed or the grounds of imposition of National Security Act, right. So, to prevent action prejudicial to the defense of India, right, relation with the foreign powers, for example, any XYZ country, security of India, regulate or expel foreigners, to prevent act prejudicial to the security of the state, maintenance of public order or maintenance of supplies and services essential to the community, for example, milk, etc., right, with a carve out where essential community acts regime apply, right. So, these are the condition of the grounds on imposition of NSA on any individual or organization, right. Now, what Supreme Court says about the NSA and if it is constitutional or not? Yes, in A.K. Roy case of 1981, just after the NSA was enacted, 1980 it was enacted, a case was filed that we call A.K. Roy case. The Supreme Court upheld the NSA's constitutionality. They said it is quite constitutional, but it stressed procedural safeguard. For example, the word as soon as possible, right, it is very vague in nature, right. It can be of 1 year, 1 month, 2 month, 1 day, 2 day. So, there is no fixed timeline on it, right, including timely communication of the grounds and effective representation before the advisory board, while recognizing limited legal representation and need for the narrow application of preventive detention. They are saying it should be applied, but in very restricted environment. It should not be used on the whims and fancies of the executive. Now, what are the judicial scrutiny in practice? The Supreme Court declined to interfere with the Allahabad High Court verdict questioning Dr. Kafil Khan's NSA detention, noting that High Court's finding that his speech did not incite violence and the detention suffered from legal infirmities illustrate court's readiness to strike down unjustified NSA. So, judiciary is there. So, we generally call there are 3 organs of the body. One is the executive, whose work is to impose NSA, right. For example, NSA, who will impose? Executive. Where NSA will be drafted, so it is in the parliament. Their work is to formulate the law. And who will adjudicate the issue or who will look for the constitutional aspect of the issue? It is the judiciary. So, in recent past we have seen Dr. Kafil Khan's case, and also it is a very famous case of one Manipur journalist named Kishore Chandra, who was detained under NSA, and Manipur court ordered release of the person citing non-supply of material and procedural lapse. So, these are the cases that you can quote, right, and there are obviously other famous cases as well, right. So, how NSA is imposed? So, either state government or home department, right, or if district magistrate or the police personnel, for example, commissioner of police or anyone authorized to impose NSA is satisfied, there is a subjective satisfaction of the concerned authority, then they can impose NSA on an individual. But the case once imposed should be referred to the advisory board within 3 weeks, right? And the detainee have to inform the grounds of their detention. Board of judges, which generally composed of the person qualified to be judges, give verdict on the sufficiency clause, after which government confirms or revokes detention. This is the process of confirmation as well as the revocation process, right? Now, what are the key safeguard and limits available to it? So, there is advisory board oversight, requirement to communicate the grounds, right, as soon as possible, revocation power, statutory maximum period is there, like 12-month is there, and these are the various safeguards which are available to an individual if the NSAs impose them, but it is again very strict in nature, imposition of NSA. Now, what is the India centric reform ideas? Now, we will have to first codify A.K. Roy safeguard legislatively, right. There is no codification of the Supreme Court basically order, we need to codify them, right. And for example, we need to mandate full and prompt supply of relied upon materials, digital copies, and reasoned time bound decision by the advisory board to strengthen detainees article 22 protection, right. It calls for the preventive detention, article 22, you know it, right. Now, we will have to tighten the section 3 threshold with clear statutory definition of public order versus law and order. We need to define it, what is the meaning of the public order as well as what is the meaning of the law and order clause, right. And we need to require a written clarification or certification that ordinary criminal law is inadequate before adopting or confirming the NSA or imposing NSA on an individual, right. The first resort should be the ordinary law, last resort should be the NSA, right. Now, we need to publish quarterly NSA stats, as we publish the in the NCRB data by the MHA. Regular such kind of the data should be basically published in order to make it more transparent, more effective, and there need to be accountability mechanism for this as well, it will ensure it. Also, we need to bar or strictly regulate parallel NCAs. So, various states have basically enacted their own NSA like conditions, right, or the acts that should not be at the place, because NSA deals with the states as well the union level. We should adhere to the one law, one country, one law, and accordingly the procedure should also be as per the standard norms, right. And we can establish an independent legal panel for the detainees before advisory board, and there can be safeguard before the advisory board as well, so that the person should not be, there should be no misjustice or basically abortion of justice in such scenario. And given allegation that speeches, videos triggered violent unrest, authorities said NSA public order and secure to the state ground. However, essential judicial review will test proximity of the ground, supply of material, and adequacy of ordinary law. These are the reform methods that should be adopting. Now, let us try to solve the question which is given in the screen based on the discussed information. Answer your comment in the comment box. Next news is very interesting. If you are appearing for the UPSC and if you are aspiring to become an IAS, this news can inspire you, because recently Rajiv Verma ji has been appointed as a Delhi's new Chief Secretary by the Ministry of Home Affairs, right, and it is related to the Indian polity and governance aspect. So, we will see who is Chief Secretary, what is his mandate, and how they are different from the Cabinet Secretary. Now, the Chief Secretary is the senior most civil servant at the state level or the union territories level. We know the Delhi's union territory with the legislation, right, which coordinate the entire administrative machinery as the principal advisor to the political executive at the level. There are two executive, one we call political executive, that is the CMs and their cabinet, and there is a non-political or administrative executive, that is the civil servants. That for that you people are preparing. In case you are watching this video, I am sure that you are preparing for the UPSC on, right. And the post exists as a cadre post to the Indian Administrative Services, and generally it is lashed with the IAS, right. How they are appointed? Very important. They are not appointed by the governors. We have to understand, right? In states, chief secretary is chosen by the state government on the chief minister's advice. Whose advice is their chief minister's advice? Because he is man who can do the works for the CM, right? That's why CM's advice is needed, and appointed in the governor's name. Name and stamp of the governor is there, but recommendation is done by the CM, right? As an executive action under the state's rule of businesses, right? In the union territories, there is a different procedure. Appointment order are issued by the Union Ministry of Home Affairs. That's why we have seen MHA has announced the notification, right? For example, recent CS appointment of Delhi, right? Now, what are the core mandate of the CS? So, basically, he is a coordinator in chief, right? He coordinates between the political executive and the bureaucratic executive, and he look for the decisions of the cabinets taken by the cabinet, right? He coordinate agendas, recording, follow-ups, right? And the chief coordinator among all department in any state or the UT, right? They also led interdepartmental coordination and chair committee of secretaries to resolve cross-cutting issues, ensure implementation of cabinet decisions, and administrative efficiency in a state or union territory, right? And the office interfaces with the center through the conferences and mechanisms. For example, there is an annual chief secretaries conference. So, they are also the person who is a nodal officer or a connecting link between the union government and the state government, that we can call, right? Now, there is a parallel post at the union level. So, we are talking about the state level or UT level, and there are the parallel post at the level of union. So, that is the post is known as the cabinet secretary. So, India's topmost IS, that we will call senior most IS, will be appointed as a cabinet secretary. And if you are appearing for the UPSC aspiring to become an IS, your aspiration to become the cabinet secretary. Also, tell me in the comment box, there is a picture of our current cabinet secretary. What is the name of the person, right? So, tell me in the comment box. Anyways, so the cabinet secretary is the top civil servant at the union level, who is the administrative head of cabinet secretariat, as well as ex officio chairman of the civil services board, right? So, what is the civil services board? So, civil services board is a body established to manage, transfer, posting and disciplinary matters of civil servants, particularly those belongs to the All India services, and it was mandated by the Supreme Court in 2013. So, who heads the civil services board? Civil services board is headed by none other than the cabinet secretary of India, and the cabinet secretary is also custodian of government's India's transactions, allocation of business rules and interministerial transactions. And the cabinet secretary leads state union territories administration and ensures most of the decision making at the union level. Now, tell me in the comment box, who appoints the cabinet secretary of India, who advises appointment of the cabinet secretary of India, and what is the other role associated with the cabinet secretary of India, right? Now, how they are transferred, what is the tenure and all. So, chief secretaries are governed by the IS Cadre Rules 1954. There are several amendments to it as of now, which provided for maximum tenure norms and early transfer only via civil services board, right? A cadre officer can be transferred by the state or central government before completion of minimum tenure only on the civil services board recommendation, with reasons are recorded. Always there is a recording of the reason, right? And cadre ex cadre occupancy is regulated in the same rules. There is a provision for the tenure transfer. How they are removed, right? So, basically they are based on the pleasure of the executive head of the government. At the union level, it is the generally prime minister who is the head of the government, and at the state level it is generally CM who is the head of the government. Don't confuse it with the head of the state who is the president, right? I am talking about the head of the government. Since they are working for the head of the government, their postings, their appointment is also dependent on the head of the government, because anyone who is the prime minister or the chief minister would like to appoint a person who can do works for them efficiently. That is why it is lashed with the CM's office or the PM's office, right? Now, based on the given information, let us try to solve the question. In UPSC as well, there was a question based on the cabinet secretaries. So let us try to discuss this question and solve the question based on the given information. Next is on the Stampede Management. So we know that a very unfortunate incident occurred in which at least 40 people has been killed, reportedly killed in an stampede which occurred in Karur, Tamil Nadu, right. You know, the actor Vijay, who is recently formed one party, was holding one rally in which this unfortunate incident occurred, and there are reports of 40 people dying and more than 81 people are basically hospitalized. So this is the official reports, and we will have to wait for the further development of it. So topic is related to the disaster management aspect of the UPSC. Now we will have to understand what are the stampedes, why they occur, what is the solution to it, what is the role of NDMA, recommendation of the NDMA, and what is the solution to such a man-made preventable disaster basically, right. Now let us try to understand. Stampede is in India are generally preventable man-made disaster arising from the crowd mismanagement, right. And NDMA's national guideline emphasizes shifting from effective reactive crowd control to the proactive crowd management. So we will have to move from the reactive approach to the proactive approach in order to avoid such kind of the mishappening in India, right. Now why stampede matters? So stampede crowd rush events occur at regular religious places. Hathras we have seen, right, Mahakumbh we have seen. Cultural and civic categorization, with NDMA categorizing them as a man-made disaster, right, which is fully preventable through hazard risk vulnerability assessment that we call HRVA process. What is it? So there are 4 phases of HRVA generally. First phase establishes the process, second phase do the data collection, third phase do the implementation and planning, and fourth phase do the community action. So HRVA place is there, right. Capacity planning and structured on ground execution, these are the effective or proactive management of the crowd stampede management, right. Now in 2024 Hathras TSD exposed gap in permissions, capacity controls, readiness, and underscoring systematic issue from planning to emergency responses. Accordingly, we got to know what are the various issues with the Hathras unfortunate stampede, right. What are the key reason behind the stampede in India? Let us try to understand. So it can be high crowd density and poor management. We have seen this during the Mahakumbh Mela, right, or it can be inadequate infrastructure, right, and design. Similarly, during the Mahakumbh only in New Delhi railway station, this stampede occurred. Not only that, in 2011 there was Elphinstone station Mumbai, in which multiple people died out of the stampede like situation. Also there can be a panic and lack of communication which occurred in during the New Delhi railway station. There was misinformation, and it basically caused panic among the people, and there can be insufficient emergency preparedness as well. For example, in 2025 Chinna Swamis, after IPL victory of RCB, right, again there was a inefficient emergency preparation in that. Or there could be a cultural or social aspect of it. For example, in 2020 during the Durga Puja, there was a stampede. Durga Puja is being celebrated as of now as well. So we have to look, we have to be aware about the crowd management and all. Also there can be lack of crowd management awareness. For example, 2022 stampede at Mata Vaishno Devi Shrine. It was due to the lack of crowd control management, right. Or it could be unplanned large scale event. For example, in 2020 Hathras, so expected turnout was less than 10,000, but there was a ground swelling crowd. So the organizing committee was ill informed, they have not informed the local administration, accordingly stampede occurred. That is the key cause, right. Now our stampede are basically restricted to India, or only India is suffering from the stampede like situation? No, the multiple basically countries do face the similar situation. For example, there was a Seoul fatality in 2022, there was Moscow death 1896, and there was a Lima disaster, and there was a Y temple death, and there was a Mina premature death. So there are multiple accounts of the such kind of the deaths. We have seen people, more than 1000 people have died as well in the past, right, in stampede like situation. So these are not restricted to the India, it is global issue, but yes, since our population density is quite high, we are generally there is a lack of awareness among the masses, there are the high chances of the stampede in India, right. Now, why generally stampede occur and what is the reason stampede is occurring in India as frequent interval? So, there are density driven crush, for example, when crowd exceed the critical density, generally there is around 4 to 6 persons per square meter, this is the maximum capacity. If people are increasing this limit, then stampede can occur. There can be compressive asphyxia and domino fall. If one person is falling, it can result into the falling of others as well. We have seen this in common scene during the stampede situation, which can be escalated into the mass level disaster, right. Second is the triggers and the terrains. There can be sudden surge toward the focal point. If someone is the religious leader is present at XYZ places, there can be ground swell situation in such situation. Blocked by narrow exit are generally narrowed. Slippery ground from the rains can be there. Hathras in the same situation that was there. Barricades failure can be there, and common participants in the Indian and global event can also trigger stampede like situation, right. Now, what are the root causes of these stampede? So, first is the planning gap. So, permissions not aligned with the realistic crowd projection, and due to HRVA, poor route exit design, lack of integrated plans with district state disaster management system, it can result in the stampede like situation. But there can be operational deficit as well. For example, inadequate stewarding, there can be inadequate real time monitoring, and there can be inadequate emergency accesses, insufficient medical post, on site trigger during the high density peaks, it can result in the stampede like situation. And there can be command and communication gap as well. For example, absence of unified command, weak public RTSL system, and poor signage cause flow conflict and the panic. So these results in the stampede like situation, right. Now, what are the NDMA guidelines on the stampede situation? So, first is the strategic shifts. We have already discussed, we need to move from the reactive crowd control to the proactive crowd management via pre-HRVA. Capacity gaps are there, we need to improve. SOPs we will have to form, and we will have to integrate this with the district disaster management plan and the state disaster management plan, right. And there are role of integrations as well. For example, organizations and local district administration bear primary responsibility. Cascading plan into state national system, crowd risk are local but require standardized national guidance. There can be design and flow issues, for example, unidirectional routes, adequate ingress egress widths, emergency lanes, surge barrier, and redundancy in exit tailored to tailor and whether risk could be there. Also, there is need to have tech and monitoring capability, for example, CCTVs, drones where it is feasible, people counting sensors. There can be control rooms for live density analytics with dynamic gating and rerouting, right. Also, we need to have the public communication, robust public announcement system can be there, clearer signage can be there, ground marshal should be deployed, behavioral guidance to prevent bottleneck and panic triggers. Also, we need to have medical readiness in such situation, for example, on-site triage, ambulance, oxygen support, clear casualty evacuation plan linkage to nearest hospitals and otherwise. We need to train and exercise in a better manner. We need to do the regular mock drills, capacity building, and we will have to do the after action reviews to refine SOPs. Every time we face such situation, there could be refinement of the SOPs. Also, we need to aware our citizens about what to do and what to not do in such situations, right, in order to prevent it. Now, what are the solutions which we already know, but we are not able to imply this or apply this? Let us try to understand. So, there is a pre-event capacity governance. So, we need to sanction a realistic cap based on HRVA, terrain and weather. Revoke or modify permissions dynamically if threshold was breached, right. We need to understand the flow engineering, design one-way loop, staggered entry slots, buffer zones and holding areas to prevent opposing stream conflict. Very good suggestion. Now, next is the real time crowd control. Deploy field intelligence team to report density spikes, trigger micro closures and redirect streams before crush threshold are reached. Now, there is a need to have emergency access assurance, reserve and enforce dedicated lanes for the responders with on ground policing and barricading, and we need to understand the medical surge as well, pre-position ambulances and train paramedics, link control room alert with the hospital surge protocol. So, these are the solution that we can work upon in order to manage such situation in better manner. Now, what is the way forward in it? So, we need to mandate HRVA linked permissions. We need to tie events approval to the quantify capacity models. Exit adequacy and wet weather contingencies should be there. Enforce penalties for the violation, so that future mishappening can be controlled. Now, we will have to do the national standards and audit, in which we will have to issue enforceable standard for mass gathering, for example, route width, exit per 1000 person etc, right, and require third party safety audit for the mega events. So, very good suggestion. We need to have the command and accountability, for example, institutionalize unified command with named incident commanders and codify post independent accountability for organizers and officials as flagged in hazardous proceedings, right. Data driven prevention could be there, deploy live density analytics, there are different tools to do it, geofenced alerts, automated grade controls at high risk node for dynamic decongestion. Also, there needs to be continuous preparation on it, for example, scale DMX drills, integrate learning from the Itaewon or Haji cases, right, embedded crowd management module in police and local administrative training. These are the solutions or way forward on the prevention of disasters related to the stampede, right. Now, from the given information, let us try to solve the question. It says stampede during mass gathering have repeatedly exposed shortcoming in India's crowd management and disaster preparedness. Critically analyze the causes and impact of stampede in India and discuss the measures taken by the government to prevent such tragedies. Suggest further reform needed to enhance crowd safety during the large religious and cultural event. This is a question. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. Thank you.